When Brace Yourself Games released Crypt of the Necrodancer on the Nintendo Switch, it gained very positive praise from people who enjoyed its fusion of rhythm game and dungeon crawling to create a rhythm action-adventure game of sorts. The developers then approached Nintendo about potentially creating a DLC pack which used the Legend of Zelda franchise. As it turned out, Nintendo was so impressed with their previous work that they sanctioned and published a full sequel, Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the Necrodancer, featuring The Legend of Zelda, and it was given a release date during Nintendo's E3 presentation. Well, the game is now out, so was Nintendo's faith well placed? I'm Glenn for SwitchUp, let's find out. Cadence of Hyrule's story revolves around villain Octavo, who has put a curse on the land of Hyrule and put everyone to sleep, including Hero of Time Link, Princess Zelda and the King. Protagonist of Crypt of the Necrodancer, Cadence finds herself in Hyrule, and her first order of business is to awaken either Link or Zelda, who the player can then use. They must defeat Octavo's 4 champions found somewhere inside treacherous dungeons to stand any chance of breaking the curse. Cadence of Hyrule is set out in a very similar way to early Legend of Zelda games with a top-down, grid-based layout. You are allowed to move as fast or as slow as you wish when there are no enemies on screen, but when you enter a screen that contains enemies, the music intensifies and you can no longer move freely but must instead move to the beat of the music. The aim is to defeat each enemy within that area, being mindful of your health and moving in time with the music. Each enemy has a different move pattern, with some moving in a simple pattern of 1 step per beat, whereas some may only move every other beat, and some of them have a visual cue as to when they are going to attack, such as raising their arms. Successfully clearing an area of enemies will earn you a diamond, more on these in a minute. The longer you go without being hit or missing a beat, the more power is stored in the Triforce shaped beat indicator at the bottom of the screen. This will cause enemies to drop better loot when defeated, as well as the opportunity to get extra diamonds on completion of that area. It can also lead to your stamina bar refilling quicker. Stamina is important as some moves require it in order for you to perform them. A good example of this is Zelda's reflection move, which if timed correctly will reflect a projectile back towards your opponent. Some areas will feature a shaker stone, and activating these by touching them serves 2 purposes. It will open any doors in that area, but it will also allow you to choose to return to this area should you die. Dying will see you lose any rupees or keys that you have collected during that run, plus some of your items, but you will keep any of the aforementioned diamonds that you collected. This is crucial because dying grants you access to the special shop, where you can spend any diamonds you have on certain items, some of which act as permanent upgrades and potentially can make any subsequent runs a bit easier. As you can see, Cadence of Hyrule includes roguelite elements and procedural generation of the overworld map. Once you have chosen whether to spend any of your diamonds, you are asked to choose which Sheikah Stone you would like to warp to from any that you have unlocked so far. And eventually you will discover an item that will allow you to fast travel between these Shaker Stones at will. Having never played Crypt of the Necrodancer before, it did take me a while to get used to the premise. Being a fan of rhythm games where you usually need to watch on-screen prompts, I kept watching the beat indicator, meaning I was finding moving my character very awkward as I couldn't do both at once. After a while, my other senses woke up and I stopped watching the indicator, trusting my ears to do this job for me, and allowed my eyes to watch the character on screen. Even with that being said, I still found the beat very difficult to sync with at first, and I'm not too proud to admit that I died a lot, and I mean a ridiculous amount early on. I'm also not too proud to admit that I decided to warp to the same Shaker Stone every time I died, complete that one area to get a diamond, inevitably die in the next area, but within a few turns of farming for diamonds, I had enough to buy myself a nice broadsword from the special shop. This allowed me to attack on a diagonal as well as head on, and lo and behold, I beat the next area at the first time of asking and then went on a very good run. I really do like that the game gives you the opportunity to save for these upgrades and use them to cater to any deficiencies that you may have in your skill set. This little boost gave me the incentive to keep trying when the game felt quite alien to me early on. In fact, I can pinpoint the exact moment when it all clicked and the rhythm finally got to me. That 4-beat attack got me off and running. As you move around the map, each area will become larger and more complex, and you will also encounter areas such as towns and a few secret passages. These will be home to shops, a few familiar faces, and the occasional fairy. You can find, earn, or purchase new weapons and items in these places, and while some, such as torches or shovels, will break after a certain number of uses, much like in Breath of the Wild, or have a finite number of uses and must be restocked, such as bombs or arrows, others are permanent, like the aforementioned broadsword. You can even upgrade your items at times by spending some of your diamonds. Remember, if you do die, you lose all of your rupees, so it's worth spending them whilst you have the chance. As mentioned previously, you will encounter dungeons, which play out in a very similar manner to the classic top-down Zelda dungeons. You will need to work through the dungeon, flipping switches to open doors, finding the map, compass and keys before locating the boss room. The first time you enter one of these, it's almost as if you go from playing a rhythm game that has Zelda characters in it to you playing a brand new old school Zelda game which introduces a new gameplay mechanic. A bit like the first time you played the Phantom Hourglass on the DS and needed to use the stylus to move. It is still mostly rhythm game, don't get me wrong, but the line blurs most in these sections and I thoroughly enjoyed them. There are 4 of these to conquer before you can challenge Octavo as mentioned earlier, and you will receive a musical instrument when victorious, much like in Link's Awakening. You keep these if you die, so do not be put off by the phrase roguelite being associated with this game. Finally, there is a 2-player mode included in the game. It's local play only, so no online, although there are online leaderboards. Controls are incredibly simple, with movement being handled with the directional buttons. You can also assign a weapon or an item to each of the 4 face buttons via the inventory screen, and your map is also accessible from here. This is probably the most difficult rhythm game I have played in terms of the initial accessibility barrier, but it does become fairly natural soon enough, and if you are struggling, there is a fixed beat mode where enemies will only move when you move, which will assist players struggling with synchronizing movement to the beat. Gameplay receives 17 out of 20, whereas the controls receive 18 out of 20. Visually, Cadence of Hyrule models itself on Super Nintendo Classic A Link to the Past, but includes many nods to other Zelda games along the way. Seeing the windmill from Ocarina of Time recreated in a 16-bit aesthetic and hearing the iconic music that accompanies it is a real treat. As is seeing the beaches, which share more than a passing resemblance to those of Koholint Island from Link's Awakening. The pixel art is incredibly crisp and the colours are extremely vibrant. The depiction of Link, Zelda and the other characters of the universe is one that is almost familiar yet new at the same time. They do not look exactly as they did during their 16-bit adventures, but at the same time, they all have the necessary tropes to make them instantly recognisable. My only real negative of the visuals would be that they are so clean and bright that they perhaps look a little too cartoony at times when it comes to the cutscenes. It just seems slightly at odds with the rest of the game, but this is a very minor niggle. The music is obviously an extremely important part of the game, and it includes 25 chiptune renditions of popular riffs and themes from the Zelda franchise. It's great to hear these remixed variations of classic themes, and this is where Cadence of Hyrule becomes more than just a Zelda skin of a popular indie game. Yes, it's always nice to see famous characters star in new games, but here the music is the true star. The Zelda themes lend themselves perfectly to the rhythm-based gameplay and sound great with the extra injection of urgency and the intensity that making the music the focal point brings. It's the times when a familiar theme is taken and remixed so that the beat is fully accentuated that the soundtrack really shines. The visuals are a lovely recreation of one of the very best games in the Zelda franchise, with bold and vibrant colours, and receive 17 out of 20, whereas the audio takes the classic score of the Zelda series and ramps it up, a bit like a classic cheese sandwich with a layer of mustard, and it scores 18 out of 20. Cadence of Hyrule costs £22.49 or $24.99, and the developers have done a fantastic job of ensuring that one of Nintendo's biggest franchises was given the respect it deserves, with production values being top notch. In fact, it's difficult to think how they could have been improved had this been developed in-house by Nintendo themselves. There is quite a markup on the price when compared to Crypt of the Necrodancer, and that's the premium price that popular characters attract, unfortunately. But again, the developers have done both themselves and the industry a great service, as their high quality workmanship may just encourage Nintendo to allow other indie developers to handle some of their prized IPs in the future. The addictive nature of the game, mixed with some random generation of levels, means that this one could well last you quite a while, and value scores 16 out of 20. To conclude, Cadence of Hyrule is a fantastic game that plays a lot more like a Zelda game than I was expecting, albeit with a unique gameplay mechanic to mix things up. The roguelite elements are exactly that, very light, as you never lose progress, only some items and currency, and given that you can warp around the map, you do not even really have to backtrack. The initial accessibility point of entry was quite high for me, having not played the original, but after the first hour or so I was well into the groove, and the game does try very hard to include you, even if you are struggling. Nintendo do not give out the use of their IPs freely, well, apart from the whole CDI debacle, but that's a whole different story, and could clearly see the potential in this matchup. Their faith has been well and truly rewarded. Cadence of Hyrule Crypt of the Necrodancer gets a SwitchUp score of 86%. Many thanks everybody as always for watching. Please do remember to leave a like if you like what you've just seen. Are you going to pick this one up? I know there's been quite a bit of buzz about it. Let us know in the comments below. A quick thank you as always to our Patreons for your ongoing support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take it easy, and until next time, happy gaming.